So now I would like to introduce Enrique Arizmendi Castillo, who's going to speak about this really incredible project that you've done to create a sustainable pearl farm. So I'm just going to turn it over to you right away, okay?
First of all, I want to thank Susan for bringing us here, for her invitation to be here today. And on behalf of my two partners and me, I want to share with you what makes a pearl sustainable or fair trade, as you prefer to label it. First of all, let me tell you, I come from Guaymas, which is in the state of Sonora in Mexico, and we produce these pearls that have different colors. It is a different type of pearl because we have a different type of pearl oyster. This is the place where it happens. It is Bacochibampo Bay, and it is the Sea of Cortez. Okay. Look at the shell. The shell has many colors, and that's why the pearls can also show those colors. Mother of pearl is white. It is a light effect known as interference of light that creates that makes the look of the colors. So the species is Steria sterna. It's native, one of the two native species of the Sea of Cortez. We in this part of the world, we are already over extraction. Okay, so there was a fishery. It lasted like 400 years. And of course, extraction has a limit. There is a point where things are never more there. So the pearl oyster did not disappear. It did not went extinct. But it reached a point where they were so sparse that we did not see pearl oyster beds for many, many years. This is not new. The first pearl oyster farm in Mexico was the first pearl oyster farm in the world. It had 1,000 workers, 8 million pearl oysters in culture, and it was at the end of the 19th century that it started. See that the resources were depleting, that less and less natural pearls were coming. So that was their approach. You cannot do it exactly the same because they did not operate pearl oysters. So they relied on the pearls that naturally occur, because they had millions of them, and this was before plastic, so they were able to sell the shells to make a mother of pearl inlay work or many different items. So this is where we studied it, and this is important for you to understand. Our background is we studied biochemistry of marine resources. We did work a few years with marine mammals, but decided that we needed a project of our own to do our own decisions, and we chose to bring back the pearl, the Cortez pearl that was missing for so many years. This is another view of the pearls. We do have two different products. One is the roundish pearl. There are a lot. The one is the Mabe. Is the one that grows attached to the shell. Our first everything we believed in together was joining the Fair Trade Gems label. Why? Because it happen with this growing business of ours. And well, these are the first three original commitments. think of this 2 years, no, 12 years from now already. Okay. The three main commitments are this one: to the environment, to the people, and to the customer. So that's how you articulate that idea. There it is. So the first part was the environment. Given our background, that was easy for us to start with. First, a sustainable pearl can only come from a native species. If you're introducing species, the amount of mayhem, the pollution, the genetic pollution that you cause it cannot be labeled as sustainable. So only a native species. Something beautiful about pearl farming is that it preserves natural beauty. The impact on the environment is minimum. Nature, the journal went so emotional on this that they did publish that shellfish is actually a restoration type of project. But again, we concluded that there are certain ways of doing it right. Call it pretentious, but what we did put together and how it should be done, we lobby it and made it into a law for the culture of pearls in Mexico, which is the one with the technical name on the top. So now there are rules to do pearl culture. We extended the protection that is normally given to a species to populations. Every population species has adapted for maybe millions of years to a particular situation. Yes, they may interbreed with others, and that's why they are the same species, but this is the basic unit of evolution is the population of pearl oysters. So we made very clear with different parts that the law would not allow you to start moving pearl oysters from one part to another. This is important. There was a big loss of biodiversity because they started moving the pearl oysters of the different atolls. And many atolls now have no pearl oysters at all because the farmers were farming and moving to another one. Of course, there is a common practice in shellfish aquaculture to use triploids or tetraploids that are there. What they do is that they alter the genetic material so that they do not develop gonad, and the growth of the body increases a lot. It has a lot of implications on the environment. So for a pearl to be sustainable, it use any of these modifications because they are supposed not to breathe. They are but this is like the dinosaurs of Jurassic Park. Supposedly they do, and they create a genetic abnormality. It is known as aneuploidism. And the breeding of pearl oysters is possible, but you have to do it by making family lines so that you do not create endogamic problems with your pearl oysters. Okay. So I want to read this one. It says, genetic pollution is irreversible and incalculable. So I have to stress that point. Something else that we did read about problems with pearl culture was the disguise of fishing pearl oysters to operate them. Certainly you will obtain a cultured pearl, but you are again doing the extraction. That is not really sustainable. So, so the law now is very clear that we don't want that to happen. You will have to raise them from juveniles. Yes, this takes more time because it doubles your time. Our production cycle is 4 years. If you can go and fish only the adult ones, you cut that in half. But now the law is very clear on how you have to do it, and it is go for the 4 years. Allows the pearl oysters to breathe. You know, they grow, they mature, they become adults, and they release millions of gametes into the ocean. It is how it was meant to be. Carrying capacity of the bays is also, of the water bodies is also very, very important. And the fish ban on the fishery, the ban on the pearl oyster fishery was started in 1939. And the pearl oysters had been gone for long. The pearl oysters did not recover. And then we start with the pearl farm. And you have thousands of pearl oysters together that can breathe easily. You know, fertilization depends on the gametes finding each other in the ocean. Before the fishery, the pearl oysters lived in large pearl oyster beds, so fertilization was easy. Everybody was near to the other one. And I believe that having the pearl farm there started the pearl oyster beds that have been open to the fishery again. Not for pearls, because the incidence is 1 out of 10,000. They do sell the pearls they find, but it has been opened for the meat. But again, this is not sustainable, and that's why we go through all the problems of operating them, because you cannot depend on these very, very low numbers. 1 out of 10,000 is very low. So the fishery was opened, of course, but only the son live, only close to the pearl farm. The advantages of farming, besides the possibility for them to reproduce, is also that you are not extracting, you're just relocating pearl oysters. They attach to the outside of your net baskets, you just transfer them to the inside so that they are protected from other fishes. Because when they are very, very young, the shell is new, it is brittle, and they are like the favorite cracker out in the ocean for all the other fishes. So it is just a matter of helping them go through the critical stage when they are very, very young. Something good about pearl farming that we have seen in other countries as well is that it works like an artificial reef. Many fishes come together under the net baskets because they feel protected for a while. And then they move away. Others need niches, spaces for the younglings to grow, and they use the inside of the net baskets for that. The Sea of Cortez is one of the richest oceans in the world, but a lot of it is sand. So they lack a hard substrate to live on. But as soon as you start putting things there, everything is colonized. That means that we have to do a lot of cleaning of oysters. Barnacles outgrow the pearl oysters. The pearl farm is the only piece of the bay, and we have 2% of the Baco Chibampo Bay that still has many animals like octopus, cucumber, the pen shell, and clams. And we consider it like a small refugee. Each one of these clams will also be able to release 10 million eggs into the ocean. So by just having this safe haven for this species, they can breathe and recolonize the surrounding waters again. So this is a very good thing about pearl farming as we have seen it in the ocean. Now, in Mexico, the law is more indicative than mandatory. So if you want things to happen, the law is only applied if you go out and say what you mean. Pearl farming needs a clean environment. So if you want the law to be alive, you have to go and say, look, this is what is happening. It is prohibited, and they want to open a paint shop next to the ocean that will deliver all these chemicals. So in general, I think that a pearl farm is the defender of the ecosystem because they rely so much on a healthy one to be able to continue. So in where we live, there is a code of law. It is called territorial ordainment, and it sounds strange in English. And it says that this bay has these purposes, but people kind of forget unless you keep reminding them, and that's the importance of the pearl farming there. Now, these things are basic to you, but but these things that we have seen that are sometimes people leave behind a lot of garbage, or they use chemical substances. A sustainable, a fair trade pearl needs to avoid these two things, and you have to keep the sizes of the pearl farms medium to small to avoid a lot of feces production that settles in the bottom of the ocean. While we started with all this care about environment, we now think that the most important part of it all is people. When people face different types of stress, and it is not only poverty, they from nature. They separate themselves from nature. They see themselves as separate. But yes, poverty is one of the main reasons why you will see the environment degrade. So, so we started working hard on this part. Labor has to be formal. It brings a lot of benefits to the workers to be subjects of credit, because they can afford housing credit or consume credit if they have a formal work. So this is important. It is not a matter of you being very good to the workers, but it is being very formal that will help their families the most. The amount of time you work, the access to social security, important there. And again, because it is not as mandatory as it should be, that is to be called itself a sustainable or faith needs to address the work issue. Labor, how it is structured in the company is important. Something else that is very important for us is the way we interact with the community around us. The pearl farm has become a touristic attraction, and we have we do work with a lot of different small businesses that can bring people, guide people. We organized tourism, like the boat over there, will spend more time in our town if there are more activities to do. We are one of those activities, and we work close with a few hotels that are there to promote our destination. Also, the pearl farm has become like a part of the local pride. This is important, to work not isolated from the community, but to be a pillar of it. Is we think that it is very, very important that now product integrity is, in our case, we don't do treatments. We don't need to. It is a gem that comes perfect out of nature as it is. You don't need to polish it but the thing product integrity is, if you want to do a treatment, do it, but disclose it. And be sure that it is long lasting. We are against things that look nice and then start fading after a few months. Product integrity for a pearl means that you will allow the pearl to grow for enough time, and then you measure the pearls that you are harvesting to be sure that you are only keeping and selling those that have enough mother of pearl around the nucleus. That's what you see there. Other than that, those pearls that have a thin coating of mother of pearl, people come with their rings and they ask, what happened to my pearl? Well, that the coating was so thin that it peeled away. So there is no product integrity there. Caring for the customer is essential for what is to be a sustainable pearl. These are other things that have come along. One of them, and this is like a bad word in Mexico, but it's taxes. A business that is to be called like ours, sustainable, fair trade, has to enter the system, because there is a simulation in, like, you build infrastructure, I make like I am paying my taxes. It hasn't worked. It is a complete failure. You have to enter the system. You have to pay your taxes, to do all the paperwork that is part of the legality of being there. A business like ours cannot, you have to decide which part are you. I see Mexico like an enclosed community. We all want good streets and safety, but nobody is willing to pay taxes. It doesn't work. It is important, we spoke about traceability in previous days. It is a good thing that our pearl can be distinguished from others, because it gives this red-pink fluorescence under long-wave ultraviolet. Not all of them. It varies. The reaction varies depending on the exact color of the pearl. But it helps to distinguish a batch, if not every individual pearl. Among our commitments, and we do put our commitments on the website, because since we have a pearl farm that is open for visitors, we want people to be the ones that say whether what we do, what we say is really what we are doing. So you can go and see it for yourself. You can then download the commitment that we have as a PDF in the website, and you can go and see for yourself. This year we're going to receive like 8,000 visitors at the Pearl Farm. So it is really open and transparent. On behalf of my partners and everybody that makes Perlas del Mar de Cortez, thank you very much.
Like, just don't go that fast. Yeah. Can you guys hear this now? Okay, I have questions. Where am I running next? Okay, Eric.
I know that you have a minimum nacre thickness that you base your harvestable pearls on. Can you tell us what that is, how thick you're after?
Yes. It is, look, the most common size of nuclei that we use is 6 millimeters. So we expect our pearls to be at least 8 the day of the harvest. What happens to those that are 7.5, 7, 6.5 is that we throw them back to the ocean. We make a ceremony and we throw them back. The fate of these pearls that fall in the bottom of the ocean is that there are microorganisms that recycle the material. This is what happens to all the bones and all the shells that fall to the bottom. That there are microorganisms that make everything soluble again, so that pearl oysters that we hope are working much harder than that are using that material to build their own pearls. Not all the batches start from these nuclei. Sometimes, some years, when the weather is not great, because weather, the change is the biggest challenge for our farm, because we keep seeing new extremes, new records all the time. But going back to the nacre thickness, sometimes we put nucleus that are 7 millimeters, and then the pearl has to be at least 9. So that's the growth that you inside the pearl oyster.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm looking forward to one day. My question how climate change might be affecting you, and particularly the acidification of the oceans.
Okay, those are, we will address the two things. First of all, the climate is changing all the time. It affects the business because it takes time to adapt. Look, this species is one of the lucky ones. It's a short lifespan, and it produces an amount of offspring, 10 million eggs for a female. So for them, should we have another one? Pull it out, put another million. There is no parental care, so who cares? This strategy allows populations to adapt fast to the new environment. Very different it is for animals that have longer cycles, like marine mammals, for example. So the pearl oyster will adapt. It is the business that suffers, because you have bottlenecks, some years with very low production because of this continuous new record. A warmer year than never before, and then the year after, a warmer year than never before. And this keeps going, and there is a mortality associated to these records that are not the normal. Acidification, when it really, as it exists now, it is not a problem. But if the ocean becomes acidic, calcium carbonate will not settle. Animal that builds a shell will have problems in acidic environment. Okay, it is the concretion of the calcium carbonate. You can push in one direction. It goes back to as it originally was.
Thank you so much, because this is the first talk I've actually heard clearly the GMO problem in pearl farming. In a world that we're seeing over 1,500 tons of freshwater cultured pearl, 2016 number.
Yes, pearl oyster, like I said, is lucky because it is short-lived. That gives it a lot of plasticity. The populations are renewed all the time. But that also means that you can only have one pearl in the time of one pearl oyster. You have one opportunity. You will operate them when they are 2 years old, and there will be one opportunity of making one pearl for it. We have another species that has a longer lifespan, but it is not as colorful. So we stay with this one, the short-lived one. Even if we cannot go for the second pearl, that it's usually bigger, and then the third one bigger than the second one. But this one has all the vibrant colors that make matching the pearl so difficult.
We're down to one mic. I don't think it.
I want major occupational hazards to these workers.
Luckily, we do not. We are not exactly processing the shell, but if you have to cut the mave out of the shell, it is very important to use water and to use air extractors and to use masks. So, but that's not really the core of our work. The habits have to do with safety on a boat. That's the point. In winter, water can be way too cold, and so it is important not to fall from the boat. But related to the marine environment, which is different for us as. But other than that, there are not many hazards. There are not many accidents. It is not in that sense. Look, we started hiring workers, the first ones in 1996, and everyone is still there because it is nice. And this is essential. You have to pay enough for them to make a living. And you have to do as much as you can. The importance of formality in a business is that the business really reflects the profit it is making, and you can really give back that from there. How do you know if a business is going like really fair trade? It looks everywhere, on the invoices, on the way you pay to the business. On the when it is like cash only and there are no receipts, and that's not exactly going fair trade, because then the workers are being left apart from the profit making. So yes. Okay, we rarely have 12 meals. Every now and then, but something big that you can rely on being produced every year is 10 and a half, and that's it. It is the size of the pearl oyster. And it is the strength. This pearl oyster was determined to be impossible to use, not really impossible, but what frustrated the first Japanese that wanted to do it is that they are very responsive, they are very sensitive, and that limits the size of the nucleus that you can put in them. So 12 mil is out of our range. We have had a few. We did have one last year, but it's like very little that. I do not know if we have 10 years or more, but I see the species has this adaptability. It is a native species. This is very different from the growth of the Japanese oyster, edible oyster, in California. Okay, so we trust that we will be able to jump through the different stages of change together. We don't know, But that's a risk we know we are taking.